name's David Hernandez. I am one of the core volunteers for the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range.
Oh, that's Rachel.
That's Jesse.
I run the shop.
Yeah, Jesse's one of our core, we're both core volunteers.
Cyber Warfare Range for me, it's a place that should be treated as a makerspace. There's over $2 million worth of donated equipment that people can use to learn cybersecurity skills, learn basic IT skills, and also just general cybersecurity.
Cyber Warfare Range has been around for, what, like 5 years. We started off in a garage. It's Ray and Brett started it off as a tool to not suck so much in the Infosec community and sector compared to the rest of the world. And it was also, there's some collaboration efforts between public and private sector that needed to happen, and they were able to get some help with that. Then City of Mesa gave them a lab, and we started slapping up some servers, and it's all history from there.
It's a pretty unique, rare opportunity to have real-world hands-on experience with enterprise-level equipment in cybersecurity and IT security. You know, it's so often with traditional education, you don't have access to these this type of hardware or this type of software, and the range has been a really great resource for the community for that.
In the Cyber Warfare Range, there's many areas where you can just network with people. There's many skill sets that you can learn. It's not just about learning how to hack. You don't necessarily need to be the introvert. You can learn how to hack with others.
We want to see more people versed in cybersecurity and general security protocols, as well as more people of high caliber who can defend our systems, because it is a war out there and we want to see us winning.
All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you John Strand, one of the most, what I would say, famous cybersecurity experts, or at least he does SANS training, so I mean, he might be worth something, right? So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce him.
No, I'm not undressing. Don't get excited. Just trying to run this mic through. What was that? That was weird. Don't like the wires on the outside. I move around a lot whenever I present, and my hand gets caught in the wires, and the thing goes flying off. People get all uncomfortable, and that's strange. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get this thing going. I've been presenting already today for like 8-9 hours, so what the heck, let's keep going. By the way, just out of curiosity, are you okay with me doing 2 presentations? Sure. The reason why is we had let the people online know that I was going to give a presentation about pi, hacking, artificial intelligence, cancer, and my mom. And I'm sure, like, really? That's a bizarre combination of things. And then on the website, they were talking about tracking hackers. And I thought it would be fun if we did a presentation about that as well, okay? So that way we can hit absolutely everything. So let's jump straight in. Come on, computer. There we go. There we go. So this presentation, I can blame Dave Kennedy. And if you guys don't know who Dave Kennedy is, learn very quickly. He goes by the name Relic on Twitter. He is the owner of TrustedSec, is one of the security firms that we compete against. We call them our sister pen testing firm. We work very closely with them on a number of things. And I presented this presentation to him for DerbyCon, and I said, it's not really super technical. What do you think? And I laid it all out. And he goes, you're doing the keynote. And I'm like, what? So that was a little bit uncomfortable. Now, the goal of this presentation is also very much in line with a presentation that Chris Nickerson gave. Chris Nickerson is out of his mind. I love him dearly. And his presentations sometimes are very kind of weird, free-flowing type things. And I really liked that in one of the presentations that he did. And I wanted to follow that overall model. Basically, I wanted to get away from a PowerPoint presentation that was nothing but bullet points all over the place. Because I teach that constantly, I wanted to do something different, and this is what it was. So let's go back in time. Years ago, back whenever I was in high school, I was kind of a jackass. I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced that or been that person. I mean, seriously, honestly, you guys wouldn't be here at the Cyber Warfare Range if you were well-adjusted children in high school. You're here for a reason, right? And I was in the lunch line, and we went to a Catholic school. My mom was the food service director at the Catholic school. And the lady that was running the lunch line at the high school worked for my mom, had these little signs up all over the place. It's like, Jesus loves you, eat your carrots, those types of things. and I decided that I would make fun of her. So I started doing things like saying it in kind of a southern like pastor fire and brimstone type thing. I'm like, "Hail Jesus for the peas and the carrots and the broccoli." And I'm sitting there going on and on and on, and everybody's laughing. They think it's funny, and all of a sudden I hear, and I'm laying on the ground, and I'm coming back to light, and I realize that I just got struck in the back of my head with a cane. And I look up, and there's Brother Anthony, who's a monk at the school who teaches algebra. And he has this cane, and he stands over me, and he goes, "Mr. Strand, I don't find this even remotely close to amusing." While I'm staring up, my mom comes into focus over me and says, "Hit him again, brother." So the point of this is, my mom, at a very early age, was really trying to work out this streak that I had of being a jackass and being a bully. And it bothered me a lot that I got struck. And I was like, "Oh, well, I was wrong." But in fact, yeah, child abuse. This is the only time it's okay, kids. But it was a lesson that I learned that I thought it was humorous to make fun of this individual who clearly cared about us. I thought it was okay to make fun of the fact that she had faith. I thought it was okay to make fun of the fact that she was serving us food, and this is what my mom did for a living, and I was absolutely, positively in the wrong. My mom constantly was driving home the idea that the one thing that she would be extremely disappointed in me if I grew up to be a bully, somebody that would pick on other people. And this is something that stuck with me absolutely for the rest of my life, all because of some monk striking me. So the mom lesson for this is that bullies suck, even if it's me. And you have to be careful. Because a lot of you, all jokes aside, we are, in fact, the socially maladjusted in a lot of ways. We are the ones that were shoved in lockers. We are the ones who were made fun of. We are the ones, and how many of you guys are actually carrying Dungeons and Dragon dice on you right now or have an app on your phone? Right there, right? And it's funny because my kids these days, they watch Stranger Things. Have you guys been watching? Well, of course you guys watch Stranger Things, right? And my kids are like, "Oh, wow, it must have been so cool to be in the 80s. And I'm like, "No, it wasn't. It wasn't cool at all." So one of the problems that we have is that being the fact that many of us are socially maladjusted, as soon as we get into a position of power, we think that it's okay to beat up on other people. Please don't do that. Every single one of you moving down this career path, for those of you that are in school, those of you that are already working in this career path, you're going to be put into a position of power, and you're going to be put into a position of trust. And you have to ask yourself who it is that you are going to be. Are you going to be a jackass that's going to rip on other people for the purposes of making yourself feel better? Or are you going to be somebody that's going to hold other people up and try to improve the overall community that you are in? So this is one of the first lessons that my mom taught me whenever we were going through this in high school. And a little bit more information about my mom. My mom was the CFO of Black Hills Information Security. So she wasn't just, my mom, she was my coworker, she was my guiding light, and her presence in Black Hills Information Security, she passed away a year ago from cancer. We came down here all of the time, down to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And the ideas and the concepts that she instilled in me are also the ideas and the concepts that continue to carry forth in what we do in our company. Because it's not enough just to be rich and to make money and be successful, but it's about trying to make the world ultimately a better place. So let's continue on the topic of bullies. Because even though you may be done with bullies that you dealt with whenever you were in high school, or some of the bullies that you deal with in college, there are still bullies out there, especially for those of you that are new. Some of you are working in this career field right now today. There are bullies, and in fact, many of them are behind large corporations. And security vendors today, they very much have a bullying attitude for anybody that does any research. I love the quote, "Unleash the inner felon." I liked that. That's nice. I would try to temper that with legally within the confines of this place with full permission, of course. One of my favorite quotes is from a company by the name of Secure Ideas. Their logo is professionally evil. So I'd encourage every single one of you to try to be professionally evil. But in doing so, you're going to ruffle feathers. When you're looking at security vendor products, or you're looking at products from any vendor, and you ultimately find vulnerabilities in those products, almost all the vendors have a clause in their EULA that is it's basically a non-disclosure agreement. And it says something like this: third parties, it prohibits third parties to access or use the product and prohibited in any competitive analysis of those products. To this day, there are companies like Cylance, there are companies like CrowdStrike, there are companies like all of the different major security vendors that want to stifle you for any vulnerabilities or bypass techniques that you come up with. And their scary lawyers will try to enforce these policies upon you. This is stifling freedom of speech. It is also stifling our innovation as an industry and our ability to actually excel and succeed as computer security professionals. So I'm going to quote you some things from the CrowdStrike versus NSS Labs case that was basically listed out in Delaware. So a little bit of backstory. NSS Labs did a shootout of next generation endpoint security vendors. And in their shootout, they were going to release that CrowdStrike's product wasn't that good. It was one of the ones that they would not recommend to buy. Now, just to be completely clear, the NSS Labs report was complete garbage. Don't ever do a report like NSS Labs did. It's complete and utter trash. But that aside, CrowdStrike saw that NSS Lab was going to release this report that was going to be critical of their product, and they tried to file a temporary restraining order to stop the report from being published. Now, their case was that NSS Labs violated their terms of service and their non-disclosure agreement for competitive analysis of a product. And the judge in that case heard the request for a temporary restraining order, and he ruled against CrowdStrike, basically in favor of NSS Labs. And this is something that becomes ever so important for every single one of you in this room, whether you are a computer security professional or you are somebody that's an aspiring computer security professional. So whenever you try to stop a vendor from, or a vendor tries to stop you from releasing anything, Casey or Sub-T will frown on your shenanigans. If you guys are following people on Twitter and you want to find the next generation cutting edge bypass techniques, please follow Sub-T on Twitter. He's an absolute genius and he does fantastic work, and he works for Red Canary. For those of you that are getting started, I'm just going to say this: aspire to be him. He is absolutely fantastic in everything that he does. So I'm going to read to you again. So in this entire briefing, the judge ruled that the temporary restraining order was not legal. They were going to strike it down and the report could go forth. And there's a whole bunch of legal pros and cons going back and forth about whether or not they purchased it from a vendor and they were testing it on behalf of somebody else, or it was directly purchased from CrowdStrike. It didn't matter, because in Section 10, the judge ruled this: finally, in determining whether to grant a preliminary injunction, the Third Circuit directs that courts should consider if doing so would be in the public interest. And then it lists out a case. The recently enacted Consumer Review Fairness Act of 2016 underscores the public's interest in performance assessments. The new law voids provisions from contracts that restrict a party from the contract from conducting performance assessments or other similar analysis of, including electronic means, the goods, services, or conduct of a person. The court finds that the public has a very real interest in the dissemination of information regarding products in the marketplace. If it turns out, in this case, that NSS's data is inaccurate, CrowdStrike could publicly rebut that data with evidence of its faults. The public would, in fact, benefit from such an exchange between the parties because it would serve to inform them about the trust they put in NSS Futures reports. As such, the public interest weighs strongly in favor of denying CrowdStrike's motion. What this means is, for every one of you in this room, if you find a vulnerability in a product, go public with it. If you find a bypass technique in a security product, go public with it. They cannot restrain you in your speech and your opinion. They cannot do that legally. If it is in the contract, it is retroactively null and void. They cannot enforce it. Let me give you an example. Imagine buying a car, a Chevy, a Ford, whatever. And whenever you buy that car, in the contract, it says you can't say anything negative about our car ever. That is not enforceable. Consumer Reports would be out of business almost immediately if that was in fact the case. Your job as security professionals are not just to defend networks, but your job is to go forth and break absolutely everything and share how it is broken. Things are only fragile until they break. Things will only get stronger when they break. Our security tools will only get better if we find ways to bypass them. It's like fire. You have to put it into a forge. You have to heat it. But right now, for the past 5 years, vendors have not been getting better because they've been holding this over the heads of security researchers everywhere about going public. Any bypass techniques for their products. So the direct quote from the Consumer Fairness Act of 2016, it says, in general, it says, invalidity of contracts that impede consumer reviews. That's pretty clear language. It says, in general, except as provided in paragraphs 2 and 3, the provision of a form of contract is void from the inception of such contract. That means at the very beginning. If it prohibits or restricts somebody to talk about a product, imposes a penalty or fee if somebody talks about a product, or transfers or requires an individual to contact or transfer the intellectual property over someplace else. This is the law that invalidates any contract by a vendor that tells you that you cannot talk about their product. These are bullies, folks. These are bullies who have attorneys, and they're trying to bully you into not talking about what you find. They will threaten you with lawsuits. They will threaten you with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. They will threaten you with absolutely everything they have in the arsenal because their goal is not to get better. Their goal is to silence any negative press about the products that they have. You cannot allow that to happen. Break all of the things. Hack all of the things. Be professionally evil. Unleash the inner, like, totally legal felon in the process. So, my mom in prison. Okay, so this is kind of a long story. So, one of the things we do at Black Hills Information Security is that we break into places. It's like the quote from Seekers. We break into places to make sure that people can't break into places. It's a living, right? So my mom, when she worked for BHIS, she wanted to know what it was like to actually break into a place. My mom was a food service director for 25 years in the school system at Rapid City, South Dakota. And she decided that she was going to break into a facility by pretending to be a surprise health inspection from the state of South Dakota. So she took our car, myself and Benjamin Donnelly, we sat at a really nice restaurant that had pie and Danishes and all kinds of things. And we had our computers up, and we were connected into DigitalOcean, and we were watching our Meterpreter, the multi-handler, waiting for reverse connections to come back in. And my mom leaves. And what happened was brilliant. My mom showed up to the front desk of a prison and said, "Hi, my name is RITA Strand. I'm with the state health inspector. It's time for your surprise health inspection. We need to go and we need to look at your facility. I need to look at your employee work areas, and I also need to see your nuke." Director's like, "What's a nuke?" "Your nuke. Your network operation center, you know, your nuke." "No, that's NOC." "Yes, whatever. I need to go into your NOC, and I need to check to make sure that the temperature is set up correctly, the humidity is set correctly, and you also know the rules, no food or drink in network operations. So I need to be able to make sure that no one is doing any food or drink in the network operations center." "Okay, right this way, ma'am." They took her into the nuke, and they're like, "So what are you going to do?" And she pulls out this laser thermostat so she can push it, and you see a laser beam, and she's checking the temperature of things. And I instructed her to waste as much time as humanly possible to make the person who's watching you bored and go away. So she's going around the entire network operations center, laser in the corner. Right. Laser in the corner. Right. Laser in the corner. Right. Set down the notepad, pull out a calculator, and average the 3 temperatures. Go to the next corner. Laser in the corner. Right. The person's like, "Do you need me for this?" "No, you can leave." Guy left. My mom starts pulling out USB sticks. Rubber duckies. Like pop, 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 pop. And at this point, Ben and I are getting really nervous because we have no call, no response from my mom. And then all of a sudden we started popping shells, and we're like, no, Mom's okay. We've got reverse connections coming out of the place. We're doing all right. So she was done in the nuke, and then she went into the employee work areas and went and made sure that the trash cans were clean and no food was like underneath the tables and all that stuff. She gave them a complete health inspection because she had worked in food service for 25 years. She had all the paperwork, knew how it was supposed to be filled out, did the entire thing beginning to end, and then at the end, she sat down with the director. She said, excuse me, sir, so in the future, we have this self-service form. Is it okay if I give you the self-service form? Well, yeah, absolutely. Great. It's on this USB drive. Just enable the macros. You want to turn, just turn those on. Bang. Shell in the director's system as well. So when she came back, she was just elated. She was absolutely elated because she got to break into a prison, which is something I have never done. And not only did she do it, she breezed through it easily, as though it wasn't a thing. And in fact, when I asked her how did it go, she could only talk about the health inspection. You wouldn't believe the mold that was in their fridge. I'm like, yeah, but how did it go? Oh, well, I had them clean the mold, and I explained the bleach solution that they should use. I'm like, no, how did it go? Oh, their network operations center was filthy. They had like cans of pop all over the place. I'm like, you know what? We got shells. Go with it. So the fact that she did that was something very important to me. And she was a food service director. There was no way anyone would ever think my mother would be a lead hacksaw compromising computer systems, right? So the funniest thing about this entire thing is at the end, we had our call list. You have your get out of jail free memo that shows you the phone numbers. If you get caught, call these people and they will get you out of prison. So when we were done, we were supposed to call 3 people to let them know that we were successful in breaking into the various locations. I called the first person. Hi, this is Bill. I'm currently on vacation this week. If you need anything, call James. Okay, call James. Hi, this is James. I'm on vacation at Scout Camp this week. I'll be out of line. If you need anything, call Jerry. Call Jerry. Hi, it's Jerry. I'm out in Scout Camp this week. They were all Scoutmasters, and they all left in the mountains the exact same week that my mom was doing this entire pen test. If we would have been arrested, which is always a possibility, we would have had to have waited until Monday to get out of prison for somebody to vouch for us. So that was pretty awesome as well. So the mom lesson on this is be willing to try new things, okay? I know that a lot of you, that's not really that big of a problem. I mean, you're working in IT, you're working in IT security, you're in one of the most dynamic, rapidly changing fields on the face of the planet. I mean, seriously, can you guys look at this year? I mean, we can't, like whenever I think about it, I can't get past like the Equifax breach, but we had Deloitte was compromised. Did you guys see Accenture was compromised earlier this week as well? It's crazy. Discuss got compromised. We are dealing with compromises all of the time, and I can go into why that's happening, and I'll talk more about that in the second presentation that I'll do. But the point is, we cannot stop and say, this is what security is. We have implemented our controls, we have implemented firewalls, we have implemented AV, we are secure, we are done. You will never be finished, ever. One of the things you will see constantly in this industry is that security is not an end state that you can get into. The people in this room that do this every day, you deal with executives all the time, they say, hey, is this system secure? No. The answer to that question is no. It is not secure. It is something that is a constantly evolving state. And I also hate to warn you, please understand that you will be the ones that will be blamed when things go sideways. I am sorry, but that is the truth. I wish I could sugarcoat that somehow, but I can't. We go back to Equifax. Executive goes in front of Congress. And what does he do? Does he stand up and say, this organization could have done better, but we failed. We let the American people down. But we are going to strive to do better as an organization. We're going to double down. We're going to start doing the right things. Instead, what did he do? Yeah, we had one IT guy that screwed up. He probably plays Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. Blame someone. Threw them under the bus. Be ready for that. That is going to be your cross that you are going to have to bear. Be ready for it. And don't freak out when it happens. Expect it. It's coming. So let's start, speaking of trying new things. My mom, towards the end, she was on a lot of pain medication, and the only thing that actually worked was medical marijuana. And people will be like, well, you can buy pills like Marinol. No, that's not. No, you're wrong. My mom was getting a lot of drugs from Denver. I won't say how, but it wasn't me. I wasn't getting her marijuana and stuff from Denver. And she was afraid that she was going to become a hippie. She literally had like a month left to live, and she was afraid of like seeing Rainbow Connection or something. So she, towards the end especially, she was willing to try new things all of the time. And I'm talking about this because towards the end, my mom was very much in pain. Towards the end, my mom was starting to lose her mind, and she continued to struggle all the way through. In fact, the last week that she was alive, she insisted on making quilts, not the last week, but while she was passing away and fighting cancer, she was making quilts for every one of her grandchildren. And she had two as yet not born grandchildren. And she made quilts for every one of her children and every one of her grandchildren. And she got everyone together 36 hours before she passed away. And she handed out these quilts. And they had little sayings that were written on them. She had little things like the baby clothes and like the jeans. She made each of these quilts custom for every one of her children and her grandchildren. In addition to doing this, like before she passed away, she called me over and she goes, John, I can't remember my password for my Black Hills Information Security computers. Like, why, Mom? She's like, I don't know. So I had to use Conboot to break into her computer and reset her password so she could get back in. She goes, yeah, I got all this done, and I want to get back in. I want to check a couple of things for accounting. I've got to get a report done for Erica. I've got to do all of these things. And she wanted me to unlock her computer so she could do those things. So we unlocked her computer. We reset the password to one that she could remember, and she put the bong down, and she went to work. Which, honestly, as the owner of the company, I'm a little bit nervous about that. It's like, hey, Mom, why don't you just take a break? That's okay. Yeah. But she insisted on working. And she insisted on finishing these quilts. And this was literally 36 hours before she died. And the point I'm trying to get across on this is don't ever give up. Ever. And it's going to be hard for you. And for some of you in this industry that are working in it right now, it is hard. Because you're going to get blamed for breaches. You're going to try to do the right thing. And you're going to get pushback from executives, systems administrators, other security professionals for doing the right thing. Be respectful. Respect everyone, but fear absolutely no one. Push for the right things. Lose arguments. Come back, push for the right things again, lose again. Keep pushing, keep fighting, never, ever, ever give up. Because when you give up, man, it's over. And I see so many people, information security burnout is a very real thing. It exists. You fight this stuff for 7 years, you fight this stuff for 10 years, and then you see people getting blamed for trying to do the right thing, getting thrown under the bus before Congress. It is really, really hard not to throw your hands up and just give up. Because the breaches are systematic, they are constant, and I hate to tell you this, we've already lost. Whenever you look at the Equifax breach, 150 million citizens, Social Security numbers, dates of birth, salary information. You look at the Yahoo. Yahoo took forever to come clean with how many accounts were actually compromised. You look at the OMB breach. How many of you guys lost your information as part of that? You guys know what an SF? You guys know. I know you guys know what an SF-86 is. For those of you that aren't in it, you guys know what an SF-86 is? What does an SF-86 have?
That's got your life story, every place you've ever lived, all of your family contacts, their names, any relatives, place everywhere you've traveled overseas, any foreign contacts that you have, any business relationships that you have with anybody, you name it, it's there.
Everything. Everything.
In short, yes.
In short, just to sum it up, everything. So don't worry about it. I hate to tell you this, but we have lost. Everything that can be breached has been pretty much breached. From this point on, anybody else gets breached, they're like, yeah, well, we got breached. But you know what? All that data was breached as part of Equifax anyway, so we figure no harm, no foul, right? But the reason why we need to keep fighting is not necessarily so that we can win today. We need to keep fighting, and this is a hard thing to internalize and get across. We need to keep fighting for our children and our grandchildren, because this crap can't happen for another 50 years. We've got to get it right. We've got to keep fighting. And what's nice is where you're starting right now, a lot of you in this room, is kind of at ground zero. You have only to go up. I hate to say it, but my generation, which is weird for me to say that, we screwed it up. We're sorry. We're going to rely on you that are in school right now. You are the teachers that are teaching these ideas right now. It's going to be up to you to pick up the torch and do better than we did. And I sure hope you do better, because you have to do better. And a lot of this crap happened. And this is hard for me to talk about, because the people at OMB, I know them. The people at Yahoo, they are my friends. The security team at Equifax, I know them and I trained them. I have trained over 10,000 people over my career. And a big part of this burden of failure, I understand, lands and sits squarely on my shoulders. And that's something that I wrestle with all the time. But I'm going to tell you something. These people that work in the security teams at these places, they're not idiots. These people that worked at the security teams at these places, they didn't screw up. These people on the security teams at these places fight all of the same fights that a lot of you fight every single day that work in security. They fight the same fights that a lot of you that are moving into computer security are going to fight. They are fighting constantly against executives. They are fighting constantly against systems administrators. They are fighting constantly against the attitude of it's not broke, don't fix it. They are good, hardworking people who are working in extremely difficult situations. If at any point you find yourself saying, the people that run that program are morons, you do not know what you are talking about, and you are being a bully. You need to learn from them. And if you ever get a chance to sit down and have a beer, root beer or otherwise, with any of these people, take it, because they will tell you things and you will learn things from them. They've seen things that you will never, ever, ever believe until it's actually happening to you. So let's talk a little bit about math. So this is pretty much self-explanatory, I think. Right. So what this is an algorithm called k-means clustering. It's an artificial intelligence algorithm. And do you guys have any classes on AI algorithms or machine learning or anything? You guys do? Awesome. Huh? Big data analytics. Awesome. So this is actually in that. So that works out really well. I'm going to steal this chair. Is that all right? All right, cool. So whenever we're talking about k-means clustering, before we get started, I'm going to explain artificial intelligence to you guys fairly quickly. And I'm not going to be like a standard vendor where artificial intelligence, machine learning, smoking mirrors. All right. So what we're going to do is we're instead going to start with Plato. Plato had a question. How do you as a human being know that this is in fact a chair? Constructs. I like that. That's a good answer. I like that a lot.
It fits the purpose that we would use a chair for.
Purpose is tough, but you could do that. How would you do this mathematically? Yeah.
Because I was taught that it was a chair.
Excellent. You were taught that it was a chair, but here's something that's interesting on that line. I can show you a chair that you have never seen before, and you will still recognize it as a chair. Similar to a chair we already know. I like that as well. Plato's answer was a bit different. Plato believed that somewhere in the formless mass, there was a perfect chair. It was the perfect representation of all chairs, and it was the essence of chairness. And that every single, don't laugh, you're going to make me laugh, and every single chair in history was merely a shadow and a representation of that chair. So it had constructs that actually matched the way a real chair, the only true real chair, actually looked. Turns out Plato was actually a computer scientist. He was trying to figure out how we can identify things and we can break things down into quantifiable constructs and ideas. And with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we do something very similar with k-means clustering. So one example that we can deal with this is we can deal with this in beacons. Let's say we have malware on the inside of an environment, and it's beaconing and connecting outbound to a command control somewhere in Malaysia or Kazakhstan, as I like to say. Is nice. It's somewhere out there, right? How can we identify and track that beacon without trying to write a signature for every single piece of malware that's out there today? A little bit on signatures. Signatures are dumb. They don't work in this industry. They never have worked, and they never will work. We have signatures for antivirus can be bypassed with ease. We have signatures for trying to find intrusion detection systems and writing their signatures. Those can be sidestepped with ease. And yet we as human beings continue to try to write signatures to detect things on the network and on the system. And when those signatures don't work, we try to create bigger signatures, YARA rules, indicators of compromise, threat intelligence feeds. These things do not work. But as human beings, we're all inherently drawn to them as ideas. And the reason why is, as a human being coming up through the world over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, if you were 9,000 years ago, you're walking around and you're like, hey, dude, eat that mushroom. He's like, no, you eat it. You do rock, paper, scissors, or whatever they did. I guess they didn't play scissors. Rock, paper. It was probably just rock and paper back then, to be honest. And one person always won. And you lost, right? You're like, I'll always lose. And then you ate the mushroom. You ate the mushroom and you died. And he's like, well, I'm not eating that mushroom again. That bear over there? Jim snuggled with that bear and he got mauled to death. Don't snuggle with bears. So in your human brain, you look at risk in terms of don't eat that flower, don't touch that cougar, fire burn hot. And you learn your risk matrix based upon that, and your risks did not evolve very quickly. The mushrooms didn't automatically turn into like completely different mushrooms, like, oh, shiitake, oh God, that got me. Gets me every single time. But as human beings, we are constantly trying to quantify risk in nice little boxes and say, well, here's APT 23, or here's Gothic Panda 52, here's Shadow Sad Panda 24, and we're going to identify how these pandas and these shadow actors operate, and then we're going to be able to detect them. That's garbage. That's not how things work. Your threats are constantly evolving, and they're constantly changing, and we have to be ready all the time. So we can start using machine learning, big data analytics to actually start doing some analysis and finding trends of what bad guys do. So let me talk about beacons. Let's imagine that we have the chair analogy, but now we're going to put it over to a beacon on a computer system that is beaconing out to a bad guy's server. What are the characteristics that we would see in that beacon that would make it a perfect beacon? Pulse, very good. We call that interval. So we have this line across the top. As the connections get closer to the arrow, they get closer to a consistent interval. Think a heartbeat. Think a pulse. It doesn't really matter what the pulse or the interval is. The only thing that matters is that it's consistent. It can be once every 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 12 minutes. It does not matter. That would be a pulse for that beacon. And we can plot all of the connections between every single endpoint on the internet that your internal endpoints are communicating to. And the closer they are to the bullseye, the closer they are to a perfect interval. Now notice the connections aren't right on top of the bullseye. They don't have to be. It doesn't matter. K-means clustering is resilient to handle that. Another way that we can look at it is data size. So imagine, like, just out of curiosity, how many of you guys are parents here? Right, cool. Have you guys ever heard this? Mom, 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 or dad, 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 dad. It's a consistent pulse, it's a consistent heartbeat, and the data size is the same every time it communicates outbound to check for additional commands. It's basically going mom, 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 mom. It's always MOM, the exact same data size. So it goes to the server. Any commands now? Any commands now? Any commands? Any commands now? Any commands now? And we can check and we can look at the consistency in the data size, and we can plot the scattering of those data size connections. Once again, they're not an absolutely perfect arrow, like right on the bullseye, but they're darn close, and there's a cluster of them. The next thing we can do is connection time. How long does the connection work? This is the equivalent of mom, what? Mom, what? Mom, what? Mom, what? Ah! So the response in that connection time between the mom and the what is consistent every single time. Commands, no. Commands, no. Commands, no. Commands, no. How long is that connection established once it is in fact established? Now here's where the chair analogy comes into play. You will never see an absolutely perfect chair in the way that you define it. You will never see an absolutely 100% perfect beacon. But what you have are clusters. You have clusters that are very tightly coupled and they're close to each other. We can draw circles around those, and that's K-means clustering. We're looking for clusters that are a very tight, consistent pattern. This is all in something called RITA, Real Intelligence Threat Analytics. It was named after my mom, actually, before she passed away. The developers named it after this. And it allows us to do this type of scoring for connections that are leaving your environment, and it allows you to identify beacons that are leaving your environment. If you look at the top beacon, that is a VS Agent backdoor. We wrote VS Agent at Black Hills Information Security to bypass pretty much everything. It does ASP view state encoded base64 clear text HTTP command and control. What that means is clear text, well-formed HTTP in a parameter that is ignored by every firewall on the face of the planet, because the view state parameter is randomized, and it's randomized in its length as well. We have 8,636 connections. We also do blacklisting in RITA, and we also do exploded domain. This is really cool. Have you guys studied DNS backdoors here at school? I think some of you guys have. Okay. A DNS backdoor is a backdoor that uses DNS for command and control, and it basically is forcing a recursive lookup every single time. And here you can see that we have connections to the domain nanobot ninjas, and if you look, we have 30,000 subdomains for nanobot ninjas. That's not normal, folks. That doesn't happen normally. So RITA and all the things, I don't have a lot of time to go into it, but RITA is free. And one of the things that I think is important to understand whenever we're talking about RITA being free with the artificial intelligence algorithms, it's written in Golang, it's clusterable, it's scalable, it's an amazing piece of software. When we were working on RITA, I spent a lot of time with my mom, and as I said, she was the CFO of our company. And I remember coming down here to Phoenix, and we would be at the Holiday Inn Express just outside of Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and I would do presentations in the hallway on RITA. And my mom would come and sit next to me, and she'd snuggle up close, and she'd put her head on me while I was talking. And we were talking about the math, we were talking about the idea of hunt teaming, we were talking about the idea of trying to find bad guys in cyberspace. And for a while, we were toying with the idea of the entire thing becoming a commercial product. And my mom said, keep it free. Keep giving back. If you look at Black Hills Information Security, if you look at Trusted Sec, if you look at Secure Ideas, if you look at InGuardians, you look at a lot of the good security firms out there, they are constantly giving back to the community. Always. We break into places for a living. And a lot of our tools are defensive tools. And the reason why we release defensive tools is because a tremendous amount of the organizations that we break into cannot detect the attacks that we're launching. So it's up on us to try and come up with new tools and techniques to detect what we are doing. So we have ADHD, the Active Defense Harbinger Distribution, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. We have RITA, which is a beaconing analysis framework. We have the CRED Defense Toolkit. We are constantly giving back. And my mom's point on this is give till it hurts. The community has been exceptionally good to me personally and the people at Black Hills Information Security. And I guarantee you this, the more you give back to this community, the community will give back to you. If at any point you sit down and you're like, this idea is $1 million idea and I'm keeping it to yourself, to myself, you are wrong. It is not going to go that way, and it is an incredible pain in the ass to go down that path. Give till it hurts, constantly. For those of you that are in school, you want to work at a really good security firm, start a blog, start doing videos, start writing right now. And I know you're going to feel like a moron. You're going to be like, no one's ever going to read this. They will. The first time you go out for a job, if you have 20, 30 blog posts on all kinds of topics, from basics of Nmap to basics of TCP dump to basics of using Wireshark, if you demonstrate the capability to give back to the community, You demonstrate the capability to actually write effectively. You demonstrate the capability to put the time into sharing what you know. You will do fantastic. If, however, you think you're a super genius and you're not going to share anything with anybody ever because they're all dumb and you don't want people to know what you know, you're a horrible human being and you need to leave this industry right now. So speaking of horrible human beings, I teach a lot. I've established that. Somebody mentioned at the beginning, oh, he teaches for SANS, and I teach a lot of people. And at the last conference I was at, one of my students called me over, and he showed me a screen, and he had a screen very similar to this. He was like, hey, check this out, check this out. I have over 5,000 systems that I've compromised. I'm like, wait a minute, you mean with permission, right? Yeah, with permission. So my victims, like, it's not how this works. This is a remote access tool. These are all systems that were compromised all over the world, and you can jump into any of these computer systems. And this student was in my class, and he was doing all of this stuff, and it was kind of weird because we couldn't get out of him if he was a pen tester, security professional, and it was right up until the point that in the back of the class, one of my facilitators was sitting with him. And he started going to these systems and quickly rotating through all of the webcams on these computer systems. And he was stopping on the webcams of any computer system that had a female on the other side. And it was at that point we were like, okay, you're done. You are out of here. That's it. We're done. We're not teaching you anymore. You can leave now and don't ever come back. And his argument was, well, I'm not hurting anyone. It's just purely research. It's not like I'm stealing money from them or anything. Whenever you start going down slippery slopes to justify being a criminal to yourself, it never stops. Ever. Oh, I'll just stand up an evil wireless access point and I'll backdoor any of the systems that are in this room, and that's okay because they're all sheeple. They're all idiots. If you call other people sheeple, you are objectively a bad person. Get out of the industry. If you think it's okay to exploit computer systems without permission, you are a criminal. I will hunt you down, and I will be happy to put you into prison. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people in this room that would be happy to do the exact same thing. Don't be that way. I understand that a lot of you came up and you were the picked on. You were the bullied. You were the one that was put down. You were the one that was beat. I understand that, and I get that. And you get this flame. You get this ability to actually break into computer systems, to take the power back and get some revenge. And I know what that feels like, but you have to rise above it. You have to be better. Don't justify doing bad things. When I was growing up, I had this picture in my home. It is now in the official Black Hills Information Security bathroom in Spearfish, South Dakota. Ask Sierra and Brianna, they can vouch for this. And a lot of people at Black Hills Information Security wonder, why in the hell does John have a picture of a prison? And I'm also very partial to this picture of a prison. It is one of the prized possessions in my life. I have an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar, this picture, and one other thing I'll share with you here in a little bit. Not much else really means all that much to me as far as things that I have. Growing up, I had this picture in every single home that I lived in. It was drawn by my godfather, and let's just say he had a first-person perspective on drawing this picture. And as I was growing up, my mother would periodically point this out to me and say, John, you do not want to end up in prison. You don't want to be like that. And I think that she understood that I was a little hellion and a little bit of a jackass. And she knew that she had to fight constantly to try to make sure that I went on the proper path. So I always had this picture. This picture was outside of my bedroom. All the while I remember growing up. It was something that was with me at all times. And I still have it to this day, and I'm never getting rid of it. Okay, it's in the bathroom, I get that, but it's still there as a constant reminder. Because when I was growing up, I wanted to be Superman. Did your parents ever make you Halloween costumes from scratch? Yeah, that's actually my red underwear on the outside. I desperately wanted to be Superman. And my mom made this cape for me on the back. By the way, the other prized possession of my life, right back there, you see in that corner, the guitar case, that's the guitar that I had. I still have to this day. My dad bought it the day I was born. But my mom made this cape for me. And I didn't bring it with me for this conference. I did to DerbyCon. I don't like to travel with it. But my mom, about a week before she passed away, she pulled this cape out and she handed it to me. And she said, I'm glad that you made the right choice. She kept it for 30 years. And she gave it to me. These are the things that define us. You have to be a good person to be in this industry. I see far too many people that are constantly taking advantage of other people because they're getting power back from being powerless. I know what it's like. I know how bad it sucks to be a geek and have people not understand who you are and what actually makes you tick. Don't be a bad person. Make the right decisions. We have the power to be awesome or incredibly evil. Please choose to be awesome. We can do amazing things. We're going to lose a lot of fights. It's going to suck. But when you die, and this is something I think about a lot, when you die, you get an opportunity to look back at what you accomplished. And you are in an adversarial role in what you do in computer security, whether you're a student, whether you're a defender, whether you're a teacher, whether you're someone that's standing up a center that's trying to teach people to do the right thing. There is a very clear line between good and bad, right and wrong. And we are on the side of right. We are trying to defend networks. And I want you guys to remember something. And I apologize for my 504 students. I do this same kind of thing a little bit later in 504. I want to explain to you what screwing up looks like in this industry, what losing looks like, because we've lost, but we haven't lost everything. Right now, a lot of the breaches that we have haven't actually resulted in anybody dying yet, at least on a mass scale. I want you to think of a cyber attack where someone unleashes a chlorine tank like they did in Bhopal, India. I want you to think of a cyber attack that they open up the floodgates for a dam. I want you to think of a cyber attack where they systematically shut down the power grid and all of a sudden every single intersection light stops working and the mass pandemonium and chaos. I want you to think of a situation where people die. After September 11th, everyone freaked out about the security of our nation. I don't want to get into the right, the wrong, the moral, the not moral. I don't want to get into that political argument. The only thing that I want you to recognize is that after September 11th, there was a clamor for security. Right now, when I fly with my family and my children, I have to explain good touch, bad touch, and TSA touch to my daughter. Why the hell do I have to do that? The point is, if we screw up, you're going to have a country and you're going to have a number of people clamor for greater security control, greater oversight, greater monitoring, greater regulation. And right now, the internet is crazy, and it's weird, and it's free, and it's dangerous, and it's awesome. And if we lose that, we lose something incredibly precious. That is what you are trying to protect, okay? We're trying to protect against those types of catastrophic things. So please, be awesome. So I'm going to switch over to another presentation that's a little bit more light.
By the way, all our equipment is donated.
Yeah.
So if you want better stuff, maybe don't.
Good excuse, good excuse. All right, so let's talk about hunting bad guys, okay? Some of these topics I'm going to glow over really fast because we already talked about. So when we're looking at computer security, moving forward and getting better, Mr. Einstein had a definition of insanity. What was his definition of insanity? And in this industry, we are doing the same thing over and over and over again, and we're somehow expecting that there's going to be different results. So I want to talk briefly about this slide. This slide is important. This is how organizations have discovered that they've been breached. It's from the Verizon Data Breach Report a number of years ago. The percentages haven't changed all that much. 34% of the organizations say that they discovered that they were breached from an unrelated third party. Somebody else picked up the phone and said, hey, you're compromised. Fraud detection picked up 24%. Customers picking up the phone, the customers, 9%. Law enforcement, 8%. The actor going on a Pastebin and saying, I popped your systems, by the way, it's out here on Pastebin, 7%. Now, unknown really bothers me. I don't know how that actually happens. How is it that an organization wakes up one morning, they're compromised? They're like, how do you know that you've been compromised? I don't know. I came into work, I slipped, and I'm like, oh my God, it's breach. I don't know how that happened. Internal users, we like to make fun of users, and I already mentioned don't be a bully, but don't be a bully. Internal users, 4%. Fraud, how much? Where do I write a check? So right here. Hey, you guys, it's working on my computer right now. Computer. I'm trying to turn it off and on again. So.
Yeah, that's one of these things.
All right. So if you looked at that slide, all of the other security technologies, your IDS, your IPS, your SIM, all of those are responsible for detecting 1% of all of the breaches. So if you think the computer security is nothing but a game of trying to find a proper security technology to implement and it's going to do your job for you, that is not how this is going to work. Most security technologies detect less than 1% of all the breaches. So whenever I say things like your AV is worthless, okay, it's 99% worthless, especially against a targeted and determined attacker who's trying to break into your computer systems. So the bottom one on that is managed security service providers. These are third-party organizations that are going to try to do security for your organization for you. Less than 1% of all breaches are detected by managed security service providers. So what I'm going to propose today is I'm going to start a new security company. And I want to know how many of you guys are looking for a job. I'm going to hire all of you, all right? So here's the deal. And this is all a joke, by the way, just saying that. They're like, yes! No! So here's how my company is going to work. We're going to name my company Unknown. We're going to be 5 times more effective than any of the security products you have ever purchased. And here's how it works. Periodically, those of you that work for me will call our customers out of the blue, and you'll say, you've been compromised. And you'll say, how do you know? I'll be like, we don't. But we'll be 5 times better than any technology that you can buy. Now, you tell me that organizations just aren't going to throw dollar bills at us all day long. And here's the best part. We're going to charge half as much because we care twice as much. That's my logo for it as well. So, all right, so here we go. We've got that. Yay!
It overheated.
It overheated. Fans. So we need to stop building static walls for our defenses, because anytime you build a static wall, an adversary can go around that wall. Now, every year, we give a presentation called Sacred Cash Cow Tipping. And in Sacred Cash Cow Tipping, we bypass every single major antivirus engine in an afternoon. Now, we do this for a number of reasons. First, it's fun. Second, it's great marketing. It just works, right? The third reason is organizations need to understand that their security technologies can and will be easily bypassed. And only after you do this will you truly start to understand that security is not about products. It is not about point solutions. It is about architecture. And that's what good organizations are doing to secure their networks. So a lot of our current strategies are not working because we're doing the same crap that we've done time and time and time again. If you jump in a time machine and you go back in time and you say, hey, what do I do to defend my network? And they're going to say, well, you patch, need to keep AV up to date, IDS, IPS systems. You come to today, they're like, well, patch, now you use next generation antivirus and next generation firewalls. I like how we've ran out of so many next generations that companies like Trend are starting to call their products X generation, which like sounds trendy and hip if you were in the 90s, but you're not. So we got to break this cycle. So hunt teaming and using RITA is about actively looking for adversaries. You will never be successful in this career. You will never be successful in computer security if you think you just turn on a product, it does its job for you. Look, a lot of the executives, we've already talked about this, they don't like you, right? Like, you make them uncomfortable. Like, you're wearing jeans, black shirt. I mean, come on. I'm like, hey, I want to party with this guy. But executives are like, I bet you he doesn't golf. And they, you know, is that a Rolex? No, that's not a Rolex. Now we got to move on. Sorry, the only thing I can think of with your shirt is Pickle Rick. But it's a cactus. I get it. But it's like, I'm Pickle Rick. Turn myself into a pickle, Morty. Turn myself into a cactus, Morty. So we need to actively do this stuff. And unfortunately, executives believe that they can buy a security product, and you're going to fight against that. You have to as well. So what this is up here, this is not hunting. If you have an automated hunt teaming solution, it's the equivalent of going out buying spam, mounting it on your wall, and like, yeah, that was a 4-point spam can. There I was, out in the middle of the Piggly Wiggly. And I saw that spam. There was another guy going for it, but I beat him with a scone. You don't sound badass by bringing spam home at all. And by the way, they have the weirdest spam in Hawaii. Has anybody been to Hawaii? Good night. You think it's just a joke. No, it is real. Those people love spam. I mean, there's actually the spam. There's the Monty Python spam. You have weird cheese spam. I don't even know what spam light is. It's just the water from other spam cans. So we already talked about the data analysis. We already talked about RITA. So I'm going to jump into this. So what did you guys think computer security was going to be? What are those of you that are starting in this career field? What do you guys think computer security is going to be?
Lots of lock picking and password check.
That's what you do when you're a pen tester, and that's awesome. Don't get me wrong. You want to go there. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. But at any rate, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they think of computer security, they think they're going to be defending their networks with a Nintendo Power Glove. They're going to roll into the network operations center on a skateboard with a trench coat. And they're going to talk to people. It's like, oh my God, Cookie Monster is eating my files. What do I do? Saying, me want cookie, me want cookie. And you could say, type cookie, idiot. And you're like, oh yeah, that was obvious. And you think it's going to be sitting at a computer and sharing a keyboard with an attractive member of the opposite sex to stop the hacker from hacking your firewall with JavaScript. This is what we think that the world of cyber is going to be. Unfortunately, the way it really is in many organizations is it's being a janitor. You'll get a call, you'll be sitting at your desk, it's always in the basement. If you guys haven't watched the IT Crowd yet, you need to. That's where you're going, okay? Hello, IT. You click the link. Oh, God. John, clean up on aisle 3. Jim clicked a link. Oh, geez. Clean up the mess and then go back and wait. That's what a lot of computer security is. And that's because we're treating computer security as a passive endeavor, that we can actually achieve security in this and then we just clean it up afterwards. So now we're going to talk about fun things. We talked about hunting hackers with RITA. How many of you guys want to actually track where the bad guys are and mess with them? I heard a fantastic story about this place. I don't know if it's true. That government hackers came in and did a demonstration hack, and you guys got access to one of their systems. Is this a rumor, or is this a true thing? That's fantastic. It was someone somewhere, maybe. All right. So whenever you're dealing in computer security, I want you guys to keep OODA in your mind: observe, orient, decide, and act. It was developed by John Boyd, who is a Top Gun instructor. And he developed OODA for fighter jet pilots. And whoever he realized could observe, orient, decide, and act the fastest was the fighter jet pilot that got to keep breathing, which was a nice thing to be a fighter jet pilot back in the day. This idea has since moved to almost every area of warfare, and it applies to cyber warfare as well. So when you're looking at observe, orient, decide, and act, right now, our ability as defenders to observe attackers is really bad. It's kind of the equivalent of wearing a brown paper bag over your head, and when someone hits you in the head with a baseball bat, you're like, I got hit by a bat! Oh, that's good, our IDS system's working, Bill just got hit. That's the way computer security runs today, but it doesn't have to be. So another way to put it is detection time plus reaction time must be less than the amount of time it takes for a bad guy to successfully break into your network. Or all warfare is based upon deception. Now, Bruce Schneier has a quote that he likes to say many times: security through obscurity is no security at all. And I have a quote: Bruce Schneier is wrong. So he is. So the more that you can use cyber deception, the more you can use honeypots, the more that you can use these types of technologies, the more it is actually going to slow down an adversary, and trust me. Now, there's some questions as to whether or not this is legal. We wrote a book at Black Hills Information Security. The new version of it is out. It's Offensive Countermeasures, the Art of Cyber Deception. In this particular book, we talk about hacking back, but we break it up into a variety of different areas to make it more digestible. There's this great quote. Let me set the background story. There was this one lady, Susan Clements Jeffries. She was a substitute teacher. One of her students came up to her and said, "Hey, do you want to buy a MacBook Pro for $50? Which sounds totally legit. So she said yes. She met this student at a school bus stop. I'm not making this up. She literally did the transaction at a bus stop. Purchased the computer, took the computer home, and immediately started cyber sexting her boyfriend. That computer was stolen from a school district. They had absolute software installed on it. And they were able to track where that computer was, and they were able to record what was on the video camera. And they took multiple pictures of Susan Clements Jeffrey in various states of undress and in sexual activity. Susan Clements Jeffrey, having none of that, decided that she was going to sue Absolute Software. This is what Judge Walter Rice said. It is one thing to cause a stolen computer system to report its IP address or its geographical location in an effort to track it down. It is something entirely different to violate federal wiretapping laws of the person using the stolen laptop. What this means is the judge has set a very clear line for us. The line is IP address, location information for things that you own, you're cool. As soon as you cross that line and you start accessing the files of the bad guy and pulling down their browser history, you're now violating the privacy of that individual. So what we do is we break everything down in ADHD. This is a distribution that is free. Go to Black Hills Information Security, go to projects, it's a Git project. You can install ADHD on any Ubuntu 16.04 system in under 5 minutes. It has full tutorials, step-by-step instructions, and all of the tools that I'm talking about are there. We even have videos walking you through step-by-step how to use these tools. So there's no way you can do this and not get off to a running good start. I'm going to share with you a handful of tools. There's over 20 tools built into ADHD for cyber deception and tracking bad guys. But we took the idea of hacking back and we separated it and broke it up into annoyance, attribution, and attack, the 3 A's. Annoyance, attribution, perfectly legal. Attack, I'll make it dead simple for you. Get a warrant every single time. So let's jump into attribution. Annoyance is like honeypots, Keepo servers, basically port spoof, make every port look like it's open on your system. There's a bunch of things to annoy a bad guy. But I want to share with you a couple of things about attribution. The first one is Honey Badger. It was written by Tim Tomes. The newer version of Honey Badger is written by Benjamin Donnelly. It's called Honey Badger Red Edition. We had to update some of the code, and it works really, really well. What it does is if a bad guy interacts with a website and runs a Java applet of our choosing, it will geographically locate where the bad guy is within some situations 20 meters. We can do it with Java. We can use it with HTA. We can use it with Excel spreadsheets and macros. We can track where the bad guy is in a number of different ways. The trick is convincing the bad guy to actually run it. Some people are like, well, Java's old. No one's going to run Java. That's the point. If a bad guy comes to your website and you have Java running on the website, the bad guy's going to think, well, that's old. They're vulnerable. And they're going to run that applet. And I'll show you how we can trick them into running that applet. This is an attacker in Melbourne, Australia. This is an attacker in Moscow. That one was creepy. We won't talk about that. This is one of my favorites. This was a student in Pepperdine University. We had a student that was trying to attack one of our websites. I think it was one of Tim's websites. And was trying to break into it all of the time. And the student was actually at a dorm in Pepperdine. And if you zoomed in, you could actually see the dorm. And we called the dorm, and the RA answered the phone. He's like, hey, like, hey, can I get Snooze? Because we actually got the username on the computer and the host name of his computer system. He's like, Chris? I'm like, Snooze? Oh, Snoozy, yeah. All of a sudden the phone rings. Another gentleman answers the phone, hello? And I say, stop trying to hack my computer! And he's like, ah! So there's nothing like picking up the phone and calling your adversary to tell him to get the hell off. And he then wanted an internship. He didn't get one at all. So how do you get a bad guy to run something like this? Well, you make it look like a fake VNC page. The bad guy comes to the page and says, hey, this is VNC. The bad guy's like, woo, I'm in! Because VNC is one of those things that if you're ever pen testing or trying to break in, you see it, you're like, woo, I'm in! Because that's what we do whenever we break into stuff. Or you can make it look like a remote authentication, right? Log in now, and a little Java pops up. Or you can make it look like an SSL VPN. You can make it look like anything you want it to be. The point is it has to be enticing for the bad guy. And trust me, they will be enticed, of course. So, oh God, this story. I forgot the slide was in this deck. So a number of years ago, a request to go to Germany, into Frankfurt, and do a penetration test for a big, scary bank. And just so you know, all banks in Germany are big and scary because they speak German. And so they invited me out, and it was right around Thanksgiving, and we submitted a quote. I was like, I don't want to do this. We submitted a go-away quote, which is like, here's a quote. There's no way you'll accept it because it's over Thanksgiving, and I don't want to go. And they came back, and they said, great, we'll happily pay that in euros. And at the point, euros were 150% of US dollars. So we were like, okay, we're on an airplane. So, so my wife and I brought our kids to Germany. We spent 3 weeks, I think, or was it 2 weeks? I can't remember, in Germany. I was working doing pen testy type stuff in Germany. And my wife and the kids were exploring the countryside of Germany while we were there. And my wife booked our hotel room. Now, the big, scary German bank said, stay at the Hilton. My wife looked at the price. She's like, it's $500 a night. That's ridiculous. How can we stay at the Hilton for $500 a night? I found another hotel. It's a little bit further away. It's about a mile walk for you, which I didn't have a problem walking. I mean, it's Germany. They're safe. And it's only like $150 a night. I'm like, sweet. She goes, it's also close to the main train station in Frankfurt, so the kids and I can get on the train and we can go explore Germany during the day. I'm like, that's awesome. I see some people shaking their heads because they know what comes next. So we got to Frankfurt. We got out our phones, and we're walking down the street. And it's like, going to the hotel, and it says, turn right now. I look down the street, and it's nothing but red lights and pink lights all the way down the street. And I'm like, oh, there's something wrong. It's broken. 9, turn around. Oh, God. The hotel that we were staying at wasn't a hotel. It was an hotel because the H was burnt out. It was a fine quality establishment because you had to go up to the hotel and you had to push a button and went to get buzzed in so they could unlock the door for you. Quality. The lady, whenever we buzzed in, went, she's like, what? And we're like, we're here, we have reservations. She goes, oh, God, you have kids. Get in, get in, get in. I'm like, okay. Come. Went upstairs, and the very nice lady at the front desk, we chose this hotel because they spoke English. She's like, you guys have kids? And we're like, yeah. She goes, oh, my God, wait here. I'll make some food, and I'll have my husband put new carpet in the hotel room. 10 minutes later, out comes a bunch of cheesy dishes and her husband with a roll of carpet. He's like, I'll be right back. And he's like walking up the stairs with this roll of carpet. So we went into the hotel room, and sure enough, he had put new carpet in the hotel room. It didn't go all the way to the walls in most places, but sure enough, it was new. And that was good. It had that new carpet smell. And we get snuggled in bed, and I'm just like, oh my God, we're in the red light district. And Erica, my wife, is kind of freaking out a little bit. And the other thing that's going through my head is I'm so glad that she booked this hotel and not me. Because I would never hear the end of it. Neither will she, in all honesty. And I'm just about ready to go to sleep. It's been a long, hard day. And then all of a sudden, the guy that runs the hotel bursts into the room. And he looks at me, he looks at my wife, and he goes, oh, goes up to the television and unplugs it. And then goes into the kids' room. We had 2 rooms in the hotel room, and unplugs their TV. And then he comes up to me while I'm laying in bed and goes, shit. I'm like, okay. And he leaves. So at some point in the next couple of days, I'm like, what the hell was he talking about? I plug in the TV and I turn it on, and each station, and there was like 150 stations, had a different type of porn on it. It was like they streamed all the feeds from RedTube into their own channels. And you could see all of them. People are like, how does he know that? I work in computer security. You'll get used to it after a while. So we were there for 2 weeks. Oh, the other thing is whenever we'd leave, we had to explain to our kids that we were in the red light district. And how the hell do you explain that to small children? Like, Daddy, what's a red light district? And I'm like, well, you remember Pinocchio? You remember the island of lost boys? Yeah. Everyone here is turning into donkeys. That's still to this day how they kind of resonated. And we were in Amsterdam last year because now you guys know I'm objectively a bad father. And my kids were walking through, and my son looks at me and goes, Dad, we're in the red light district. I'm like, I know, hon. I know. So we're at this bank for a week, and we set up the Honey Badger software. And the CIO of the bank is like, there's no way any attacker is ever going to run that software. So we gave it 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, we had this. 250 IP addresses of bad guys that were actively trying to break into the bank. We took all of the ASNs of all of these IP addresses, and we checked to see if there were any internal computer systems that were going out to these ASNs. We found 4 computer systems that were compromised, had bypassed all the security technologies and beaconing back. That, right there, that's cyber threat intelligence. You can't purchase intelligence, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it works. This is how we can actually do it when we're trying to hunt the bad guys that are out there. Also, we have a tool where you can combine this Java applet with any other Java applet, backdoor it as well. So before we close out, I think it's time that we say a prayer. And I love it whenever I get to this point in my presentation because the pucker factor gets high. Because half the room is like, oh God, he's going to pray. And the other half of the classroom is like, he's going to say the wrong prayer. And I think I found a prayer that everyone can get behind. I think I have, and I know those people are like, no, you didn't. Not at all. Bear with me. God, grant me the serenity to accept people that will not secure their networks, the courage to face them when they blame me for the problems, and the wisdom to go out drinking afterwards. And I think that we can honestly all get behind that prayer. So an invitation, please check out ADHD at blackhillsinfosec.com. It is free. And for those of you that are trying to find a new path forward and trying to do something interesting in computer security, this is a great place to start. And yes, we will send out the slides to everybody that attended today for both sets, okay? Also an invitation for RITA. It is free. If you're getting started in college and you want a project that you can get on the ground floor and you can assist with, we need all the help that we can get. If I told you the amount of money that I've sunk into this open source project, you would smile, nod, and slowly start walking to the doors uncomfortably. But I believe in this product. I believe in ADHD. I believe what we are doing is we're trying to come up with non-standard defensive technologies. One of the themes of tonight's presentation is the standard technologies and what we're doing do not work. They have not worked. They will not work. And we got it wrong. I'm hoping with the new generation, places like the Cyber Warfare Center, that you guys won't continue to try to learn the same tired crap that we implemented and we tried doing for years, and it didn't get us anywhere. Places like this, where it's an open sort of hacker space, where you can grow, you can make mistakes, you can blow things up. These are the places where innovation is going to come from. Innovation doesn't come from doing the same thing that everyone else does. Innovation comes from breaking things and putting things back together. That is how we are all going to learn. And that is the only way that we're going to get better. So I want to say thank you very much for inviting me out here. It's a weird connection for me now in Phoenix. I didn't spend a lot of time in Phoenix. I have no family in Phoenix. I have no direct affiliation. But Phoenix is the absolute last place in the world that I had a beautiful, wonderful day with my mother. You guys have an amazing Renaissance Festival out here. We went out to the Renaissance Festival. We ate steak on a steak. I got covered in mud at one of their things where the guys are doing all kinds of stuff. It was the last great day that I had with my mother. And for some reason, I'm always drawn to come back here. And I would hope that you guys would have me back again. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I think we have some prizes.